Hello, thanks for tuning in, and welcome to Amaze, the short version, the teaching channel. This week's podcast is episode 7, titled Kumbaya, translated, Come By Here. Now, Kumbaya was one of my favorite hymnals as a kid. I can remember the words to that song, and the lyrics have stuck in my head. It's reminding us of the remembrance, as in asking God to not forget us, to come by here. That is what the phrase suggests. And I think it's beautiful. But as we wish, or as we see it, God coming by here, it may not be what we think. And Stoic, as in robotic, was what I had experienced for those that came. They came to do their most, which was to help. At least that's the way it was for me. And I think Stoic mimics. It's kind of like those birds who don't want their pictures taken. So it's nefarious actions. Celestial beings, extraterrestrial, levitating and synergistic. If you want to put Stoic right up there in that category, you can. However, these people were right in my space in physical form. So heaven sent, I could call it that. And I would say yes, because those were the people that, for me, came by here. Beings in passing, without the pressure of having pressure, only to watch in observance of what they can do. Then you can call it extraterrestrial. But those stories I have written down in my books, because those were the people that came back to me as my helpers. So the people that came into my life at my most vulnerable times did their actions like anybody would, but they remained stoic. Their actions seemed regular and routine, but it was their disposition that was noticeable. Stoic is at the top of the list, right up there with synergies and levitation that we talked about in last week's podcast. Stoic people have actions that are actionable. They are heartfelt doers, although they didn't show any emotion. I felt the warmth from their spirit. So Kumbaya is a phrase that we should embrace, understanding that it's not up to us how we should see who God sends to help. Extraterrestrial, physical forms, or heaven-sent bodies. It's up to God. And it's because of our needs that we must somehow be asking. If we look at the list thus far from what I've included, I could say I've levitated, or at least experienced the observance of that as a phenomena. Seeing them as spirits having attachments to us somehow, some way. I've even come to believe that they must know us, or why would they choose to come? And although those actions are stoic, And I could see them. They were people that I had never seen before. I asked around in the hospital as I lay in my bed, recuperating, "Did you see the lady that came to help me?" None of the staff, no one knew. But there was this one nice lady who sat in the bed next to me. She said to me once as I was sitting there, she said, "They were just as you described." I said, "Who?" She said, "The one that brought you the water and set it on that cup on your dresser." I looked over and saw a glass of water. She was my roommate, sharing the bed next to me. I never got a chance to honor her. She had no idea what her confirmation meant to me. And that it meant that she was in the same sphere as me, because she had noticed them, who they were, and their actions. She saw them just like I did. So I had my proof. She continued, my roommate. "She didn't talk or speak, and she only came to you," she said. "I even tried to ask her something, but she just walked past. So I think she might be only here for you. And the other person you mentioned, the guy, he came to the door. He came close to your bed and tucked your sheet. The one you said that you were afraid of because he looked scary. I have been asleep the entire time. I didn't even know. My interactions with my roommate prior to this were that we were fortunate enough to become friends in a short period of time. But that was what I experienced prior to being in the room with her. So there was no way that she could know other than what I described. But she's seen them when even I was asleep. So what I do know is that God sends us our aides, our helpers. They could be volunteers. I just don't know. But I do know that that is what I experienced. I'm sure others have seen Stoic too. I doubt that I could be the only one. Those people will come as helpers, and Stoic is at the top of my list. As I mentioned, the staff, no one seemed to know anything about them either, except my one witness. So God blesses us with people that come by here in our space. When we ask without asking, or seek without seeking, we may not even know what our needs are. But in those unspoken words, they get passed through our spirits. And when God sends the help, we don't get to decide how that help might look. Mine have been with the extraterrestrial and with those in the physical flesh that can act robotic. So I want to end the podcast here because next week I have a very important topic to talk about. It will kind of be a pause break from the list momentarily. But as I mentioned before, it's a learning channel, and I'd like to share some experiences that were not contained in some of my books. And I think you'll find them very interesting. So thanks for listening. You can purchase my books at Amazon.com or go to my website, www.isanjones.com, where I go more in depth into the stories that I just mentioned. Kumbaya, Come By Year has been the title of this episode. Tune in next week for more.